The city was my cage, a maze of concrete and neon where every street corner held a memory I was trying to outrun. My name is Leo, and for 10 years, my life was a loop, a cycle of debt and dirty work. I was a ghost in a system, a hitman paying off a debt that only ever seemed to grow. My world was small, confined to the shadows and the shortcuts only guys like me knew. There was this one alley, a gash between two crumbling tenements that I took every single night. It was my personal shortcut, a straight line from the grim reality of my job back to the cold comfort of my empty apartment. It was dark, damp, and smelled of decay, a perfect reflection of my soul. I knew every crack in the pavement, every piece of graffiti on the brick walls. It was familiar, predictable, safe, in a twisted sort of way. One night, the rain was coming down in sheets, washing the grime from the city streets, but never reaching the filth in my own life. I'd just finished a job. The weight of it sat heavy on my shoulders, another link in the chain that bound me. As I turned into my usual alley, something was different. A single, bare bulb, usually dead, was flickering weakly, casting long, dancing shadows. And in that flickering light, I saw him. He was an old man, huddled against the wall, soaked to the bone, but with a smile on his face that seemed impossibly bright in the gloom. He was sketching in a small, weathered notebook, his fingers nimble despite the cold. I grunted, expecting him to ask for money, to flinch away from the look on my face. Most people did, but he just looked up, his eyes clear and kind, and said, "Rough night." I was taken aback. I didn't do conversation, especially not with strangers in dark alleys. I just nodded, wanting to push past him and get home. But he spoke again. Sometimes the shortest path isn't the easiest one to walk. He held up his notebook. On the page was a charcoal sketch of the alley, but not as I saw it. In his drawing, the flickering bulb was a brilliant star, and the puddles on the ground reflected a sky full of constellations, not the dirty brick walls. He had found beauty in the ugliest place I knew. I didn't know what to say. He didn't seem to expect an answer. He just tore the page from his notebook and handed it to me. "For you," he said, "a reminder that there's always another way to see things." On the back of the drawing, he had written something. I glanced at it, then shoved it in my pocket, mumbled a thank you, and hurried away. The encounter unsettling me more than any job I'd ever done. I didn't see him the next night or the night after. The alley returned to its usual darkness, but I couldn't shake the old man's words. I kept taking the shortcut, but it didn't feel the same. I started noticing things I'd ignored for years. A patch of resilient moss growing in a crack, the intricate pattern of a spider's web, the distant sound of music from an open window. The alley was still a grim place, but my perception of it was shifting. A week later, after another job that left a particularly bitter taste in my mouth, I pulled the old man's sketch from my pocket. I'd looked at the drawing of the starry alley a dozen times, but I'd avoided reading the words on the back. Now, under the dim light of a street lamp, I finally read them. It was a line of text, Isaiah 42:2-16. I wasn't a religious man. The only prayers I knew were silent, please not to get caught. But curiosity, a feeling I hadn't felt in a long time, got the better of me. When I got back to my apartment, I looked it up online. The words appeared on my screen, and they hit me like a physical blow. I will lead the blind by ways they have not known. Along unfamiliar paths, I will guide them. I will turn the darkness into light before them and make the rough places smooth. Unfamiliar paths, darkness into light. The words echoed the old man's sketch, his quiet wisdom. For years, I'd been walking the same path, blind, stuck in a loop of my own making. I believed this was the only way, that the debt was my destiny. But what if it wasn't? What if there was another route, a path I hadn't known? The thought was terrifying. The alley, my job, the detit, was a miserable existence, but it was the only one I knew. Leaving it meant stepping into the complete unknown. It meant facing the people I owed, not with a payment, but with a declaration that I was done. It meant walking away from the shadows and into the light, where all my past sins would be visible. It could get me killed, but for the first time, the alternative sting on this path forever seemed even worse. That verse, that simple sketch from a stranger, had planted a seed of hope in the barren ground of my heart. It was a tiny, fragile thing, but it was there. It was a whisper that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't meant to walk in darkness forever. The next day, I didn't wait for my handler to call me. I called him, my heart was pounding, my palms sweating. I told him I was out. He laughed, then threatened, then tried to reason with me. He reminded me of the debt, of the consequences. I knew he was right. The path ahead was not going to be smooth. It would be rough, and I was walking it blind. But as I hung up the phone, a strange sense of peace settled over me. I packed a small bag, leaving behind everything that tied me to my old life. I left the apartment, but this Jimmy, I didn't take the shortcut. I walked down the main street, under the bright lights. With the crowds of people, it felt foreign, exposed, but also liberating. I didn't know where I was going. I had no money, no plan, and a target on my back. But I held on to that verse like a lifeline. Along unfamiliar paths, I will guide them. I found my way to a shelter, a place I would have sneered at just a week before. The man at the front desk had kind eyes, just like the old artist in the alley. He didn't ask about my past. He just offered me a hot meal and a clean bed. It was there. I met a counselor, a guy who ran a program helping people like me find a new start. He told me it wouldn't be easy, that I'd have to confront my past and work hard to build a future. But he also told me I wasn't alone. He told me about forgiveness and second chances. He guided me, showing me the first steps on a path I never knew existed. Life isn't a movie. The transition wasn't instant. There were days filled with fear, nights haunted by nightmares. The rough places were very real. I had to learn new skills, find legal work, and deal with the constant paranoia of looking over my shoulder. But every time I felt lost, every time the darkness threatened to swallow me again, I thought of that sketch, of that Versi. I remembered that I was being led, even when I couldn't see the path ahead. I never saw the old man from the alley again. Maybe he was just a kind stranger, or maybe he was something more, a flicker of light sent to show a blind man that a different path was possible. All I know is that he changed my route. He gave me a new map. He showed me that even in the darkest, grimmiest corner of the world, you can find a way to see the stars. My name is Leo, and I'm no longer a ghost. I'm just a man, walking an unfamiliar path, with my eyes wide open, trusting the light to show me the way. Thanks for listening to my story. If you're feeling lost in the dark, remember there's always help, and there's always a new path waiting. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of hope and transformation.